Hello and welcome to episode 58, an AfterMaths episode of the Primary Maths podcast, the show where we talk all things primary maths. With me, Jon Cripwell.
And with me, Becky Brown.
How are you, Becky?
I'm very well, thank you, Jon. It's lovely to see you again, although it was much nicer to see you in the flesh yesterday. We're back to screens again now.
Yeah, breaking news. Myself and Becky were actually in the same place at the same time yesterday, in person. Not for long enough to record a podcast episode, unfortunately, but just long enough to have a little bit of lunch together. A slightly disappointing, I have to say, fish finger cob in this neck of the woods in Derby, but a fish finger bun. Although, you know, it tasted very nice and the company was great. So, yeah, when we eventually found each other, Becky.
I was going to say, you say we were in the same place at the same time. We were eventually in the same place at the same time. It was a slight miscommunication. I think it was probably my mistake, Jon, around two very similarly named places.
Yes, yeah. So I was in Southampton yesterday for a meeting, and staying over at a very nice hotel, actually, called the Harbour Hotel. But there is also a Grand Harbour Hotel in Southampton, and I think that's where the confusion arose, didn't it, Becky? But
yeah.
Not to worry. I had a lovely 30-minute walk into Southampton to meet Becky at the place that she suggested was 5 minutes from my hotel. I thought I was just a very slow walker, but it turns out it just wasn't quite where you thought it was, Becky, which is fine. And this is why position and direction are such an important part of the maths curriculum. And also why, Becky, we are not on the geography team at Twinkle,
Absolutely.
But very much on the maths team. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you did get your steps in, Jon, so that's my favour to you yesterday.
Yeah, I closed all the rings on my Apple Watch yesterday, just after lunch. So that was pretty good going for me yesterday. So thank you for that, Becky. Always thinking about my health and fitness. That's what I've come to know about you. You've always got that in mind. So I appreciate it. Thank you. But it was lovely to actually see you in person and, to have a mini podcast discussion even without being recorded. So yeah, that was lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to meet me. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to see a friendly and familiar face, even if I've not met you in person before. So yeah, thank you.
No, thank you, Jon. Living down very far south, I don't get to often meet fellow Twinklies, so it was lovely. So thank you very much.
Is that what I am, a twinkly?
Yeah.
Oh,
have you not heard that before?
No, that's been shielded from me before. Do I have to put that on any official correspondence? Or no? Okay, good.
I think you can.
Okay.
You can edit it out if you wanted to.
Oh, no. The world needs to know.
Keep it in.
I think. Yeah, the world needs to know. Absolutely. But as you say, remote work, working from home and remote work and being all over the place is lovely and has lots and lots of benefits, but you do miss that human connection sometimes, don't you? So it was, it's great to meet up in person. So thank you. So today, Becky, it is the day that we're recording this. It is World Book Day, and I'm very disappointed that you haven't dressed up as a character from a favourite maths book of yours. I was driving through Southampton this morning as I was leaving. I must have driven quite close to a school because I spotted several Harry Potters, a couple of Paddington Bears as well, which was very cute, and various other book characters all making their way into school this morning. And I thought, what a wonderful, joyful thing it is, World Book Day, if you've remembered that it is World Book Day and you've, taken the time to prep a costume, which I was always terrible at doing as a teacher, I have to say, Becky. Well, I bet you were good at it, weren't you, with your drama background and your access to costumes and things?
Yeah, I did quite enjoy it, actually. I do miss it a little bit, that sort of aspect. I could have
you could have dressed up today.
Should have done.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I love Maths World Book Day. I feel like people might think that that's nothing to do with maths. I did read a very sad post on some social media at some point saying the teacher saying that their school had planned a whole host of Maths Day, World Book Day activities, but that they were just doing maths as normal. And I thought, what a missed
Oh,
opportunity and what a shame,
hiss.
because they only
Yeah.
taught maths. So a real shame to get some of that maths and stories in, which you were talking about on Tuesday with Hannah.
Topically, we were. So we were joined on Tuesday by Hannah Allison, who was basically espousing the huge benefits that can come through using storybooks in maths lessons with children of all ages, really, as a way to get children thinking. And, this is a big topic of mine this year, Becky, get children thinking and positively engaged in their maths learning and the maths thinking, really, making connections. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and have a listen to it, because then at the next World Book Day, you might think again about how your maths lesson looks if you haven't, or maybe people just didn't do any maths today because they thought, it's World Book Day, we're off timetable. I think there's loads of places that we could have done some maths. Maybe we should have helped people with that last week, Becky. Note to ourselves for next year.
Yes,
But
next year.
yeah, absolutely. But go and have a listen to that episode, because Hannah shared some fantastic tips and thoughts on how best to use storybooks in maths. Have you got a favourite? I'm putting you on the spot here, Becky. Have you got a favourite maths storybook at all?
I have. I happen to have it here. I mean, you have put me on the spot, but you did hint to this last week, so I was ready.
Excellent. Good.
This is my favourite.
Bean 13, of course.
Story.
Bean as in, for those who are listening rather than watching, bean as in BEAN, like a baked bean or a green bean, I suppose. And it looks like there's a picture of a couple of grasshoppers.
Yes. I mean, they're described as bugs. I think they're grasshoppers.
Okay.
Yes. Bean 13 by Matthew McKelligott. And I love it. And I mean, listening to Hannah talking about how, these low threshold, high ceiling, and I'm very much into that at the moment. As you know, lots of discussions around that in other areas. I thought actually a book is a perfect way to do that. So essentially, and I don't want to give away the ending.
No spoilers.
Of the book, but essentially the two bugs are picking beans for dinner, and they pick 13 beans for dinner, and then they go home to share the beans.
Between two of them?
They can't share.
Between
Yes.
two of them? What were they thinking, Becky?
To start with, that's the plan. And they try to share them, and of course they can't share them equally because 13 doesn't divide equally by 2. So they invite a friend along, and they try again, and of course they still can't share it. And you can see what's happening. More and more friends appear or are dragged in, and they can't find a way to equally share the beans.
I don't think I've got 12 friends that I could invite along to each have an equal share
beans.
No.
And, it does not mention the word prime in the book. Of course not. It's a storybook. It's not specifically for teaching prime numbers or factors.
There isn't an old bug with a white beard and crazy hair that says, this will never work because, 13 is a prime number, you fools. No?
No. But isn't that wonderful? But that's what you would do as a teacher. I mean, I didn't put a beard on when I taught it, but there is so much there to open up a discussion around prime numbers. And I know part of the discussion this week was about having time and how actually a storybook lesson can stand alone, and really you could get a lot of rich maths in there. But this is an example of how that could form the basis of your lesson on primes or factors or, anything. And at the end, one of the beans mysteriously disappears, and there's 12, which of course has a lovely amount of factors and makes it much easier. So, I just feel like there's so much there.
I had known that book, because I would have maybe in year 5, read that book and then said, I wonder what other numbers of beans they wouldn't have been able to share between 2, 3 or 4 friends or 5 friends maybe. You've got a whole investigation there, haven't you? And then and then different factors. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I love that. It's called Bean 13 by Matthew
McKelligott.
Fantastic.
So
it looks lovely.
Yeah, lovely book. And I think it's much, well, maybe it isn't. For me, I think I always would find it much easier to find a relevant storybook for lower age groups. So it's nice to think of one with a focus on more maybe on upper key stage 2.
I think that the part of the problem, maybe we should go into writing math storybooks for older year groups, Becky. Maybe that's our niche in the market where we'll make our millions. But part of the problem sometimes, I think, is that the ones that are pitched at slightly older children tend to be quite a lot longer, and then you don't get to read them in a lesson because it's too long. You know, even some of the ones that Hannah was talking about this week were short novels, really, which
Yeah.
were brilliant and really, really good. And great to give to a child who, you know, maybe you've got a child who loves maths but doesn't love reading, and this might be a way in for them, or, you know, somebody who loves reading but doesn't love maths, and this would be a way in for them equally, but not as easy necessarily to use unless you're going to dedicate a week to reading it, maybe in class. So finding a picture book like that, you know, children in year 6 still like picture books.
Who
You know,
doesn't?
yeah, absolutely. I used to do some great. Who was what was the name of the author? He wrote The Lost Thing, amongst other things. Sean Tan. Sean Tan has come to me. We used to do a whole series of lessons, a whole scheme, a whole unit of work on Sean Tan's picture book, The Lost Thing, in year 6. Had very little words in it. I'm not sure. Yeah, hardly anything in it at all, really. All beautiful pictures and illustrations, though. And the kids loved it. They don't think anything of it being a picture book. So, yes, Bean 13. If you use that in a lesson, we would love to hear how that has been used in a lesson. Or if you have a favourite maths picture book or storybook that you would love to share with us, we would love to hear that as well. We could do a little bit of a book review on it. So, yeah,
That would be
please do get
great.
in touch. Yeah, primary maths podcast at twinkle.co.uk, twinkle without an E, of course. Send those in because we would love to share them with everybody else and spread the word about maths picture books. Or, they don't even have to be maths picture books, do they, Becky? They could just be picture books that happen to be, adaptable to a maths scenario. So,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think those are the ones that are harder to find almost because it's not obvious. But particularly if you've been reading you've got younger children and you're sharing picture books and you come across something, absolutely share it so that everybody else can use it too.
totally agree. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. The other thing that's been on my mind a little bit this week, I was working with some teachers again, and I feel like this might be retreading old ground slightly, Becky. So I'm not going to spend long on it, but I think it's just worth mentioning again. It's just looking at how schemes are being used really in school, and whether staff feel confident in being allowed to adapt them to pupils in front of them. Because I was working with some teachers this week and at a school, and they were using a particular scheme of work, and the scheme of work that they were using, it made use of a particular manipulative that they didn't really have access to in the school. So they were just going to show a picture of it instead. And I sort of said, why? Why are you doing that? And they felt that, well, it was in the scheme, so it was really important. We want the children to have the right representations, and if they didn't use that particular representation, then maybe they wouldn't be able to access some of the questions later on. And it just made me think again of, why are we doing this? why are we tying ourselves in a very limited way to using a resource? A scheme is, as we've said before, Becky, a resource like any other resource that you've got. It's a starting point. It
Mm-hmm.
does some of the thinking and some of the work for you, but it doesn't. It's not a lesson. And if you don't have a manipulative that's referenced in the scheme, think about what that manipulative is trying to show and the structure that it's trying to reveal, and consider whether there's another manipulative that might do the job for you. If you don't have time to maybe get hold of some of those in the meantime. So yeah, it just got me thinking again, I suppose, a little bit about the role of schemes. And I'm not bashing schemes because we're working on, we're about to release a new scheme that is really exciting and that a huge amount of work has gone into. But I think one of the nice things about it is that it is designed to be adapted, and it is designed, it is expected that teachers will take it as a framework and then make it their own, really. And I was really keen on that, as you know, Becky, that would be the case, because there are 20 plus thousand schools out there, primary schools out there, with hundreds of thousands of individual children in them, and no scheme that we could write would meet the needs of all of those children at any particular point in time, even if the teacher followed it religiously from EYFS through to year 6. It just, I can't write something, nobody can write something that will meet all of those needs. So I do think that there still needs to be a conversation about the wider purpose and the wider use of schemes as a resource rather than as a lesson that is ready to be delivered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's that distinction that makes the difference, actually, because there's lots of great things, like you say. A lot of the legwork has been done in a scheme. You know that everything is progressive, and the suggestions within it might be wonderful, but if they're not going to work for you in that moment, or if you don't understand why something's been used, because that can be interesting as well, particularly if you've had a limited time to prepare for the lesson. We know that teachers are so time poor. It can become a bit of a crutch. And I think sometimes actually trying to sort of adapt something that's already there is a bit even harder than working from scratch. Thinking back when we used to write our lessons just from nowhere, not from nowhere, but from scratch. Sometimes it can almost lead you in the wrong direction. I think, who was it? Lewis? I think it was Lewis Horsley that you talked to about. We're going back a long time now, about collaboration in planning.
Yes, it was Lewis. Yeah.
And I think having that scheme as a starting point to get around a table and talk, if you're lucky enough to be in a team of people, fantastic. That's a really good use of it, as long as that time is protected and you get the time to do that, because schemes are also often billed as, save some time, we've done it for you. Well,
yes.
Actually, it's so you can then spend that time really getting down into the nitty gritty, isn't it? Look at misconceptions and things. So it's a really hard one when time is so limited, I think. But it is about looking at it as a starting
really interesting.
point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The research doesn't seem to show that teachers feel that schemes actually do save them huge amounts of time. And I'm not sure about that, because I can see sometimes when I see a lesson literally being delivered from the scheme verbatim, I think, well, how can this not have saved you time? Because you really haven't done anything to make this your own. It's very rare that I see that, but it does happen. As you say, though, Becky, if you're going to use it effectively, you do need to spend some time actually adapting it. And therefore, I think where it can save workload is in some of the thinking around the resources and the representations. Yes, you might want to adapt them, but at least some of that, the very detailed thinking about what's the small thing I want them to notice today. We're doing subtraction. Okay, we're in year 3. We're doing ultimately, but by the end of this, I want them to be able to do 2-digit, take away 2-digit. That's what we're working towards. The small steps to get to that point have been thought out for me. I know what I need to, I know the journey that I need to go on to get them to be able to do that successfully. So that's been done for me. I don't need to think about that too much. Some of the activities that we might do together or that the children might do independently, some of those have been thought out for me. I might need to adapt them a little bit. I might need to put some scaffolds in, might need to add some extra challenge. Fine, okay. But some of that legwork has been done for me. And some of the representations have been thought about for me. Again, I might need to add to those. I might need to spend some time thinking about how I'm going to deliver that. But that's been done for me as well. So I think, as you say, some of that work has been done, but all that does is free up time for you to then think more carefully about how you're going to use that resource to have a really effective sequence of lessons with the pupils. So I think it's a misconception or potentially a dangerous misconception to think we've got a scheme, so therefore teachers' workload has reduced in maths and they should be able to do X, Y, and Z, or they've got all this free time. that's not the reality and shouldn't be the reality if it's being used effectively, should it?
It's a payoff, isn't it? It's the scheme is there, so you maybe don't have to spend quite as much time doing this, but you can then spend that time doing these things that are really important for that maths lesson.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. Even if that is going to the resources cupboard and trying to find the bead strings that you know are in there somewhere, but
Yeah.
have disappeared in the midst of time. So that's what I've been thinking about this week, and what I'll be writing about a little bit on the Substack this week as well. If you haven't found our Substack yet, I encourage you to do so. Just search Primary Maths Podcast Substack, or I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Go and check it out on there. Excitingly, Becky, I think you have an AfterMathsology for us today as well.
I do. This one came about this morning, actually. I was in a work conversation. It wasn't actually maths related, which is fairly unusual, but algebra came up, was mentioned, nothing to do with what we're working on, but just happened to be brought up in conversation. And the reaction in the virtual room was interesting. It was almost
Really?
like, it was a bit like Marmite, I think. Some people were like, I loved algebra, it was great. And some people had really obviously had some bad experiences around algebra. And it got me thinking that actually algebra is one of those things that has a bit of bad press, I think. It's a bit like
Huge
fractions.
misconceptions about algebra, I think. People
Yes.
are not helped by the um, common sort of depictions of mathematicians at university and things with huge chalkboards full of complex equations where there's
Yeah.
very few numbers and everything's in letters, and therefore that's algebra. And you think, well, actually, you've been doing algebra really since reception. You just didn't
That's
necessarily call it algebra in reception.
And yeah, that is what I was thinking. Absolutely that. I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding of what it is. Children are using it from a really early age, and we're using it actually a lot in life as well.
Yeah.
But it's often described as this sudden interjection of letters. Oh,
Well, it
everything was
doesn't
going
help,
fine, and then
does it, that
suddenly letters came.
yeah, it doesn't help that when you look at the national curriculum, algebra is introduced in year 6. If you look at where the strand for algebra, there's nothing really until year 6, and you think, well, that's not true. We've been doing algebra for ages. Any time that you have a missing, a missing number in an equation, or a blank space, or a shape that represents an unknown value, that's all algebra. You've been doing it certainly since year 1, but probably since
Yeah.
reception.
Yeah, and it's given a name, isn't it, in year 6, but it shouldn't be new. And actually, if your understanding is there and you've got some conceptual understanding, algebra is a gift. Brilliant. Yes, of course I can use this to represent the unknown. So I love algebra. But the very mixed reaction to the use of algebra in a conversation today. So that sort of prompted me, of course, to look a little bit into the etymology of the word algebra, and I'm going to
Yeah.
apologize now for any pronunciations during the next segment.
Okay.
So the word algebra originally comes from the Arabic term algebra, I think, which was originally used in bone setting.
Oh,
Just literally setting of bones, to mean
as in a broken
reunion.
bone.
Yeah,
To mend a broken bone. Right.
yeah, to mean reunion or restoration. And
Ah,
then there was a Persian mathematician in the 9th century, so going back a long, long way, called Al-Khwarizmi, who had a book on equations, it's a very, very famous book I discovered after I did a lot of research into it. And that discussed the technique of restoring or completing a broken equation. It specifically was talking about moving negative terms, but just general algebra. It was a whole book, so I would hate to try to summarize it in one sentence. But that was when it sort of started being used in a maybe more of a maths sense. And then in the 17th century, the accent had shifted. So where it was al-shabar, it moved to algebra. So the accent shifted from the second syllable to the first, eventually evolving into the wonderful word algebra that we use today.
there you go. And again, one of the lovely things about etymology, I always think, Becky, is that I will try and remember that now, and the next time that I'm talking to some children about it, or even adults about it, I can give them that little bit of added context. And everybody loves a fun fact, don't they? I certainly do.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, thank you very much. I'm
The
going
rest.
to finish in a moment by putting you on the spot again
Oh
and getting
no.
you to do some maths. Have you got a pen and paper handy at all? You might need it for this one, Becky. And I did not warn you
Yeah.
about this in the meantime.
No, great.
I apologise, but I have faith in you, Becky. I think you're going to be absolutely fine with this. But we did this last week as a little bit of a sort of a maths magic almost. We're going to do something similar today. So I would like you to think of, now you can make this as complicated for yourself as you would like. I think, we're doing this live. Maybe make it.
I'll be kind to myself.
Be kind to yourself. Yeah. So think of any 3-digit number where the first and last digits are different by at least 2. So, for example, you could have 573 because the first digit is 5, the third digit is 3, and you've got a difference there between the 5 and the 3 of at least 2. Okay, don't tell me what the number is. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So I'll go with 573 as mine. Okay. What I would like you to do then is reverse the digits. So 573 would become 375 in my case. All right. Now I would like you to subtract that new number that you've made from the original number. So in my case, 573 subtract 375, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What if my new number is the bigger one?
Oh, that's a good point, isn't it? That's a good point. Oh, it doesn't say that in my. I think there's a missing instruction here, Becky, that you have uncovered. Well done. I think that the first number, that it needs to be the first digit is greater by at least 2. I think that's the key.
Ah, yeah, okay. I think
that's
okay.
So. Yeah.
That's
otherwise,
fine.
this isn't going to work.
Around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well done. Okay. So subtract the smaller from the larger. Oh, maybe it doesn't matter which way you do it. Maybe it's just the smaller from the larger. Okay, so that's interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you just, whichever happens to be the smaller, you subtract that from the larger. Fine.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got another number now. You've got a third number that you've made here.
Yeah.
I would like you to reverse that number, please. So I've done 573 take away 375, which leaves me with 198. I'm now going to reverse that, so 198 becomes 891. Now I would like you to add those last two numbers that you've made together, and I'm going to predict the number that you have made, which I think is 1,089.
Yes, I would show you my piece of paper, but it's embarrassingly messy, so I'm not going to. But yes, 1,089.
1,089. I would like anybody to write in and explain to me why that works. I do know why it works. It's quite complicated, but I will attempt to share it next week with you. But if you follow those instructions, you will always, I think, the conjecture is, always end up with 1,089. And you could use, Becky, a little bit of algebra to try and see why that might be. The way that I would start thinking about it is, any 3-digit number we could represent as 100 lots of A, 10 lots of B, and 1 lot of C. So we're just thinking about that place value, and then think about what happens to those numbers, those amounts, as you manipulate them in the way that I asked you to do so. So I will share that with you next week, but it's a good one to do if you want to, involve your children in some quick calculations and amaze them with the result that they'll all end up with the same number if they do it correctly. I thought that was quite a nice one to do, even if it is a little tricky to explain potentially.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love a bit of maths magic.
Yeah, me too, Becky. Me too. I think that's about all we have time for this week. So thank you very much for joining us for another AfterMaths episode. I'll be back on Tuesday with an interview with Will McKelligott all about direct instruction and its place, or maybe maybe it doesn't have a place in a maths lesson. So join us for that one. He was joining us from Dubai. So with everything that's happening in the world, I hope you are okay, Will, out there. But look out for his episode on Tuesday.
Look forward to it, John. And if listeners have enjoyed today, if they could please leave us a quick rating or review, we do appreciate it, and it helps other listeners to find our podcast.
Absolutely. And if you do leave us a little review, I will read it out next week on the podcast. So do so. Just a reminder, get in touch if you've got a favourite storybook that you can use in a maths lesson, or if you have an answer to why that little bit of maths magic worked at the end of the episode there, or if you just have anything else that you would like to share with us for a future episode. We would love to hear from you as ever. But otherwise, we will leave you to it, and we'll see you again on Tuesday. Thank you very much.
See you next time.